My name is Charlotte. Since my son was born, Christmas has become less about the holy night and more about preparing a huge chicken dinner, using my child's belief in Santa as a shield and getting pestered for the latest trend video games. I'm 40 now. These new video games are pretty expensive, and before you know it, a new console is out and you find yourself having to buy the whole thing again. But Santa never says, hold up, because a new one will come out, so we parents sadly prepare the gifts for our son. Even though my son says there is no such thing as Santa, he conveniently claims this year I'll get Super Mario from Santa. Profit-minded son, wonder who he takes after, me? Today's story is about the time before I was blessed with a son who's just like me. I really want you to hear it. As a child, I was, well, it's hardly worth mentioning, just as the title suggests. I lived in the shadow of my brother Nathan, who was a year older, excelling at everything and considered a genius. Well, even if he was a genius, up until the lower grades of elementary school, it was nothing extraordinary. Things like being able to read signs unusually well for his age, mastering riding a bike in less time than other kids in the neighborhood, or being fast at running. But for our parents, it was enough to proudly say, our son can do anything and everything, isn't he amazing? On the other hand, I was average in every aspect. The epitome of ordinary, an ordinary child. I had to practice more than most to learn to ride a bike, and my report cards were a neat rows of C's, not outstanding but not a failure either. In other words, I was a child with no particular distinguishing features. You could call me a professional at being average. At first, my parents thought it was normal for the younger sister to develop slower, but gradually they started treating my brother and me differently. They would attend his parent-teacher days, but not mine. At the sports festival, they would video him just standing in line and wouldn't even take a photo of me. I was both frustrated and lonely, so I worked hard and managed to score 100 on a test. But instead of praise, I was met with a cold response from my mom. Nathan always gets 100. Aren't you embarrassed to brag about getting 100 just once or twice? You're always so bland and clumsy. That was the moment I realized I would never be in my parents' eyes unless I surpassed my brother. Eventually, my brother joined the local soccer team and became a prominent figure with his exceptional athletic ability. My mother would beam saying, Nathan is amazing, as other moms praised him. If he scored a goal, dinner that night would be lavish, and if his team won a championship, he would be rewarded with new clothes or shoes. But I was the one who had to eat the leftovers my brother didn't want, and I was given his old rewards when they were no longer new. The difference between us was like that between a king and a commoner, maybe even less. In those days, I wasn't shedding tears, not at all. Maybe because it had been that way for so long, I gradually became emotionally detached from my family. Crying over every little thing would have been too much for my heart. I had to close off my emotions to protect myself. When I was in the upper grades of elementary school, my life began to change. My father, who had been working at a franchise restaurant, decided to start his own business. My mother helped with his work, and for some reason, I ended up being responsible for the household chores. Why did I have to do the housework and not my middle school brother? It was useless to ask. The reason is Nathan is busy with his club activities was the only answer I got. Even when I reached middle school, I was still stuck doing the chores. Entering adolescence, I started to rebel a bit, saying, let me have some freedom. But my mother scolded me, Charlotte, you shouldn't be playing around, and even forbade me from joining any clubs. As a result, I never got to walk home with friends after school. Right after leaving school gate, I was always in a rush to go grocery shopping. The school and the supermarket were far apart and in opposite directions. Yet my parents would mock me, saying, Nathan is amazing at both clubs and studying. Compared to him, Charlotte really has no redeeming qualities. Even my brother, who always asked for seconds of the meals I cooked, would say things like, having her as a sister is embarrassing. I wasn't allowed to join any clubs, and my study time was taken up by chores, so how could I achieve anything other than household tasks? Although I said I was emotionally detached from my parents, I couldn't let go of the hope that someday they would recognize me, so I kept trying. I did my best with the household tasks and improved a lot in cooking by imitating recipes from books I read in the library. But not once was I praised or even thanked. Around this time, I began to feel that my efforts were reaching their limits. Moreover, as my father's business started to take off, my parents began telling everyone Nathan will be the successor. Looking back, it's surprising they were so confident about stable management until my brother's generation just a few years after opening. But they cherished my brother more than ever as a supposed heir. Indeed, he was always at the top of his class and easily got into prestigious high school. My Nathan has such flair in everything he does, but Charlotte, even as Nathan's leftovers, she's terrible. I wonder why I even gave birth to her. It was just a painful waste. I'll never forget the words my mother said, laughing and drinking on the day my brother entered high school. I don't like these parents at all, and I don't want their love, but why does it hurt so much? I don't want to be loved. I convinced myself of that to protect my heart. But I finally realized all I ever wanted was a little recognition, just you did well, and a glance my way. As I listened to my parents joyously celebrating my brother's enrollment, I cried about them for the first time. Months passed, my parents told me, Charlotte, you can just drop out and take care of the house, that's all we need from you. Even my brother agreed, saying with your grades it's economically better if you don't go. Clearly, there is no one on my side in this house. I left the room without saying a word. I thought it was pointless to resist. My parents took my silence as consent and were thrilled, thinking they would get a free housemaid. I am just the leftover of my brother, a painful waste at birth. I had no choice but to give up. Later, during a meeting with my teacher, I told him about my decision to drop out. Of course, my parents didn't come, claiming they were busy with work. The teacher, who seemed to have a hunch about my situation, kept asking, "Are you sure about this?" But I just repeated what my parents had told me. We have discussed it as a family. I really wanted to continue my studies like everyone else, but there's no way those parents would change their minds easily. Relying on the teacher wouldn't make a difference. I couldn't think of any other option but to give up. A few days later, Charlotte, why are you dropping out? My friend Madison, who's also my cousin and the only close friend I have at school, asked me in panic. It seems our homeroom teacher who knew about our relationship had asked her to talk to me. I have to because my parents said so, but it's fine. I don't like studying anyway. It's actually a lucky break. Madison looked at me with a complex expression, probably realizing I was forcing myself to act cheerful. It happened that night. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and when I opened the door, there stood Madison and her uncle and aunt. What's up with you guys? My parents slurred, tipsy and speaking dismissively to Madison's uncle and aunt.
Sister, brother-in-law, is it true you're making Charlotte drop out?
I was taken aback by Uncle's question. Madison had told him. So what? You know, right? Our son is capable, but our daughter, she is really good for nothing. My mom replied. Uncle looked at her as if she were something foul. Aunt, too. Madison just looked down quietly. Even though they're relatives who know the situation, it's hard to be seen as lesser by your own parents. I was filled with a mix of shame and pain. To be honest, a plain daughter with no future is practically unnecessary. The eldest son is more important. Why didn't you take her? My mother joked. Then Uncle replied seriously,
We'll take you up on that offer,
and walked straight towards me.
Charlotte, if you're okay with it, would you come and live with us, become our daughter?
Aunt chimed in. I even changed your diapers when you were little. We have always seen you as our own child, and it's hard for us to see you suffering like this. But I couldn't answer. Really? Become their daughter? Could I finally be happy this time? Would I be compared to Madison and feel unwanted again? Sensing my thoughts, Madison said, from now on, we'll be cousins, sisters, friends, and not just that, but rivals too. I believe those words could only be spoken by Madison, who had seen my upbringing more closely than anyone else. I don't want to be compared to my brother unilaterally. I want to fight on equal terms, at least be seen as a rival, not inferior. She remembered the words I had once whispered. Tears welled up in my eyes from Madison's boundless kindness and her uncle and aunt's warmth. Yes, I want to live with Uncle's family. I want to be sisters with Madison. As I said this, Aunt hugged me, saying, I'm sorry, it took so long to decide. And Uncle grasped my hand, apologizing for being late to come for me. Madison beamed. We are going to the same high school, and we'll definitely make the dream of eating ice cream together on the way home come true, with a thumbs up. My parents and brother were stunned, never imagining that their casual remarks would lead to me actually being adopted. But I finally got the family I had always wanted on my own terms. It felt like a sudden clearing of my vision, a dreamlike surreal feeling. Later, my parents, belatedly regretting letting me go, more precisely losing their free housemaid. apparently contacted Uncle several times asking, "Won't you bring our daughter back home?" Thanks to Uncle firmly rejecting their absurd request, my parents eventually gave up. Just giving up like that after a bit of resistance, it shows how little they really cared. I was truly grateful I had left that house. And then, having officially become the daughter of Uncle and his wife, I was freed from household chores and spent my after-school hours snacking at convenience stores with Madison and hanging out with her friends. I'll admit, my studies took a slight hit for a while, but I had always balanced studying with chores. So even without them, I kept my grades above average. Madison and I, both academically strong, would playfully compete over test scores. Since we had different strengths and weaknesses, we ended up helping each other and scoring similarly. Unlike my birth parents who rewarded my brother for his grades, my new parents didn't do that. Instead, they always took us out for meals and funs and were generous with clothes. Apparently, Uncle made a fortune in stocks, and though it wasn't obvious, we were well off. There was never a question of me wearing Madison's hand-me-downs. In fact, I was often treated like a dress-up doll by Madison and Anne during shopping trips. I continued school without dropping out and lived a life like any other kid. Thanks to our academic rivalry, Madison and I both got into the same national university, though in different faculties. This led to her landing a job at a major electronics manufacturer and me at a major bank, securing stable careers. Uncle and Anne joked,
Our daughters are elites, making us high school grads feel out of place. You could have slacked off a bit more.
but they were happier than anyone about our new beginnings. Then about 10 years ago, I married Matthew, my co-worker. I returned to Uncle's house to prepare for the birth of our child. Matthew and Uncle would talk to my belly every 15 minutes, saying things like,
I'm the daddy and I'm the grandpa.
while Anne and Madison teased, "The baby is scared of seeing your faces so close." It was a peaceful time. Then one day, something unexpected happened. The doorbell rang, and when Aunt went to answer it, there stood my birth parents and brother, whom I hadn't seen in over a decade. Wait, brother, right? Let me correct that. My birth parent and someone who looked like my brother. "What can I do for you?" Aunt asked. My birth mother replied, "We have a favor to ask." During this exchange, Matthew appeared behind Aunt.
Who are these people?
He asked. I answered, "My birth parents and something that resembles my brother." My husband asked,
What do you mean by something that resembles?
but I was at a loss myself. He looked so different from the brother I remembered. Amidst my confusion, my birth mother dropped a bombshell. "We saw Charlotte walking in town with her pregnant belly. Please give us the baby you're carrying."
What?
I was astounded by her outrageous demand, but Uncle, Aunt, Madison, and Matthew reacted before I could. It's true what they say, when you're too shocked, you can't even speak.
What do you mean by that?
Uncle immediately demanded, glaring at my birth mother. "This child, this failed son." Saying this, she grabbed the man who looked like my brother by the neck and dragged him in front of us. Yes, he had changed so much from when we lived together that it was no wonder he was barely recognizable. His chin had doubled and his face was covered with unkempt stubble. His belly looked like it had 3 layers, and even his wrists, which are usually hard to fatten, were chubby. His upper arms were so flabby they seemed like they could be trampolines. His hair was a mess, looking as if he had walked through a storm, and despite it being winter, he was wearing thin clothes. His shoes were scuffed, his sweater was dirty, and his jeans were so tattered they were beyond just being distressed. It was a critical condition, so should I say on the brink of death? How could he not be cold with all these gaps in his clothes? The brother I remembered, a slim and muscular soccer player, was nowhere to be seen. The man before me was unrecognizable, and I wanted to deny any blood relation to him. According to my birth mother, my brother had wanted to learn about society and didn't immediately take over the family business, instead working for a major corporation. He married his middle school sweetheart, but they divorced after it was discovered he was infertile. The cause was apparently due to a disease acquired from too much playing the field. He had been caught in his youthful infidelities and his wife left him. After his infertility was revealed and the divorce, my brother, facing the biggest failure of his life, quit his job and shut himself away, saying he didn't want to deal with people anymore. Now he rarely bathed, stayed in his room, and today was somehow dragged out by my birth mother like a prisoner, I thought, but kept silent. "Please, without this, our family name and the business will die out. Give us your child. This is the only way left."
Please, Charlotte, with this dirty son, we can't keep the house and business going. Help us.
They pleaded, tears and deep bows included. I coldly brushed off their pleading. Is your problem in your heads? And who exactly are you? Bowing to people who consider themselves strangers is just meddling.
You're our blood-related daughter. I didn't raise you to be this cold.
My father yelled, face red with anger. I don't remember being raised as a child by you. I cooked my own meals. Sure, you provided food, but I managed it all. What do you mean by raising? And you, people who couldn't even properly raise their daughter, now want to take her child? What kind of nerve do you have? My blunt words made them suggest, you could even cut ties with uncle's family and come back to us. That really rubbed me the wrong way, and they run a customer service business with this attitude. It's no wonder their business will collapse in their generation. They don't need an heir. I let out all my pent-up feelings. First of all, that dirty guy is your child. Discarding him because he's dirty like a mop? Aren't you the worst as parents? Think I would return to such a home? Ridiculous. You took care of a child only to discard him when convenient. So selfish. Children aren't jewelry. Don't discriminate against your own children based on their abilities. Love them equally. The failure before us became a failure because he never faced hardship. If you guys hadn't spoiled him, this wouldn't have happened. Sure, he's dirty and a failure now, but if you're so desperate, why not polish him up? He used to be excellent, and you stop wallowing in one setback. Lacking the spirit to face adversity, I was let down many times by you two standing here. My husband just smiled silently at my outburst. Uncle and Aunt looked at me with pride. Only Madison, my sister, was raising her fist high, as if to say, go on, more. To this, my birth mother said with a forced smile, I regret what I did to Charlotte. I couldn't do anything as a mother. Mother? I don't feel anything for that word. What? But I am your mother. Did you say something? A mosquito in the middle of winter? I pretended not to hear my birth mother's words, looking around as if searching for something. Frustrated by my reaction, she burst out, if you had been decent from the start, none of this would have happened. Just because you come crawling back when it suits you doesn't change your true nature. It's too late to pretend now. At my words, my birth mother's face turned pale. Listening silently until now, my birth father, frustrated with how things weren't going his way, grabbed my birth mother's hair and shouted, apologize to your daughter. I'm sorry, Charlotte. Please consider. Think positively. Positive? How could I? I don't care about being your heir or anything. If you want to continue the business, why don't you find some other genius blood to carry it on? I laughed at their plea. My father raised his fist to me, but my husband quickly shielded me. Aunt and Madison also moved to protect me, piling on top of me. Great teamwork. You're the one who needs to stop, brother-in-law. Charlotte is our daughter now. If you make any more trouble, I'll call the police. Uncle stared at my birth parents with an anger I had never seen before. Matthew, equally fierce, taunted my father. Nice arm you have there. Pull too hard and it might just pop out of his socket, huh? He smirked, holding my father's arm. Matthew had practiced boxing at the gym. Though his strength was more like a gentle gorilla, but a gorilla is a gorilla. Still, his formidable presence was undeniable. The corner of such a man's mouth turned up in a disgusting smile and he aimed at shoulder joint. That must be scary. The man who looked like my brother shrank back and my father gasped in fear. If you bother my family again, I won't hold back. Matthew glared at them. We're sorry. We won't come near you again. Please forgive us. My birth father and the man begged, bowing deeply. Is that all you have to say for your apology? Huh? They looked puzzled at my question. Oh, I see. After a moment of confusion, realization dawned on their faces. We are sorry for everything. We treated you horribly, ruined your life. They still don't get it. I don't think my life was ruined despite being mistreated because Uncle's family and my sister helped me. Uncle and Aunt's eyes welled up at my words. You're wrong. You're the sister here, Madison said, her eyes brimming with tears and a smile on her face. These people are truly my family. Thank you. There's nothing to forgive or not forgive, just memories to forget. Carrying grudges and resentments is too shameful to face my unborn child. I want to be a strong-willed mom. with a big heart, so I'll forget you never existed in my life, not then, not now. My birth parents realized their plan to take my child was completely futile. They let out a wail of despair. So much for not disturbing the neighbors. I refrained from saying that their shop would inevitably fail anyway. They would learn soon enough. Then Matthew suddenly spoke up.
Oh, I have one thing to thank you for.
We all looked puzzled, wondering why he would thank such people.
If you hadn't given birth to her, I wouldn't have met her. Thank you for bringing such a wonderful wife into the world. But please, give up on her and the baby.
After that, he urged us back inside.
Let's go back inside before Tammy gets cold.
True. These dirty people aren't good for prenatal influences. Madison agreed. You shouldn't say that. Aunt laughed.
All right, I'll sing a lullaby.
Uncle offered enthusiastically. That's too close for the baby, Dad. You can't sing. Madison and I joked. My birth parents and the man who resembled my brother could only stand as the door closed on them. Later, their shop inevitably went out of business. They ignored customer complaints about late orders and poor service, and gradually customers stopped coming. Now aging, my birth parents struggled with part-time work while supporting my unemployed brother. As for me, after having a boy on my first birth, I was blessed with 2 more boys. With 3 boys, it's nonstop chaos every day. They start fighting the moment I turn away, though it's never over anything serious. My brother's sweater is cooler. They argue, fighting over clothes that are the same design but different sizes. It's all the same anyway. I drew a nice picture, they would say, after using scrubbing bubbles to dry in the bathroom. Using up an entire can. Why use a whole can? Every few months, there's a scratch on the wallpaper. When Uncle and Aunt visit, Aunt would say, "Why don't you do it?" And Uncle gets roped into fixing it. Well, he willingly repairs the wallpaper out of kindness.
Matthew laments, I got a promotion, but all my money goes to fixing wallpapers. Stop breaking the expensive windows.
He says, squinting lovingly at our sons. I'm so glad we moved out of the rental and bought a house. By the way, Madison also got married and had a daughter. We're not rivals anymore. We remain sisters, cousins, and best mommy friends. Oh, and maybe a consultant for budget-friendly recipes. Surrounded by these caring and warm-hearted people, I live a very happy life every day.